Welcome back to the channel, everybody. We're in a cemetery today, and the reason for that is I've been wanting to do a video on this cemetery. It's one of the oldest ones in Parkersburg. It has a lot of history to it. It's been here since the late 18th century. There's a lot of graves. There are people that are interred in here back when it was still a state of Virginia, and even as far back before the state of Ohio was formed, back when that side of the river was known as the Northwest Territory and was considered the Wild West and the frontier of America. So this has a lot of historical importance. So I decided, after years of passing this place by and never coming in here, we were going to go ahead and come in and take a look at Holliday Cemetery. I hope you guys enjoy. First thing to note, it's right in the middle of this cemetery. I don't know what kind of fruit that is. Kind of looks like a small hickory, but it's hollow. One thing to note is a lot of the graves are destroyed and unrecognizable. On the back side of that tree is a grave that's been overtaken and destroyed. Here's the first recognizable, readable grave. A man named John Brown, not the famous one. 1808 to 1871. That's the first one I've been able to completely read. Some here that could use some cleanings and you could probably read. There's been attempts to stand gravestones back up, but it looks pretty old. A lot of this stuff's rotting. Lest we forget, these CW, I cannot read the rest. If you can make out the rest of what that says, CW states, I think these are probably Confederate graves. West Virginia was born of Virginia during the Civil War, but a lot of people in West Virginia fought for the South. It looks like these might be military graves, but I'm not too sure. There's one right here on the ground. You can see it a little bit better in camera than I can see it with my bare eyes. But it seems to be that these are all military graves. There's a couple there that are still pretty legible. Some type of little family plot here. John Bloomer. It doesn't say when he died. These all have broken off and were reset into the ground. And that's about it for this side of the cemetery. Got a little dip that goes down about 20 feet. And then I think maybe this is the older part of the cemetery. I'm not sure. One cool thing about this cemetery, it's got this big wall. Certain parts, this wall gets 4 and 5 feet high down through here. It's really old looking. You can see where parts of it are starting to fall apart down through there. Just jumped me up a rabbit. Over in this far corner here where the wall's deteriorated, a lot of these graves are just completely illegible. It's like the sandstone either wasn't carved or the erosion has worn it so bad that you can't see anything anymore. All right, so my suspicions were correct. This is an older part of the cemetery. This guy here so far has the earliest death that I've seen in the whole cemetery, 1833. 52 years, so he would have been born around 1881, maybe, something like that. That's pretty cool. We'll see if there's not some older graves in here. 1861, 1850, 1852. A lot of more legible graves over on this side. So there are urban myths that this cemetery is actually haunted. And you can look up haunted Parkersburg, West Virginia. There's lots of cool stories of people seeing ghouls on the railroad tracks and all these cemeteries in town being haunted. And this is allegedly one of the most haunted. So Halloween's getting ready to come up. I imagine there's going to be a lot of tours taken to this place around that time. Some busted up headstones here that I assume would accompany this one. All right, so this might be the oldest guy so far. Henry Logan. Actually, I've heard this name. We'll have to look this up. Henry Logan. That's a famous name, and I can't remember the history behind it. Died in 1845 or 1815. I can't quite tell. I think it's 1815, but if you look, there's some spacing and there's some erosion there. It looks like it might have been a 4. But nonetheless, 60 years old. So go back, that would be 1785. That's a pretty old one right there. Right at the edge of the cemetery. I don't know if they're place markers for these graves or graves behind them, but they get right up against the fence here. Thought I was being watched. Maybe a little family one here. Here's a piece of sandstone. I imagine was a grave. It's almost fallen over the hill towards the railroad tracks. I don't see anything else over this way. That's a tree stump. But we're right at the edge. It's hard to tell. Got some broken bottle stuff here. And right here looks like the jawbone of like a raccoon or some small animal. Lots of busted up gravestones right in here. A lot of them resting on this monument. You really can't make out any of them. I don't know if this was like part of a family plot or if this is just a bunch of the graves from the rest of the graveyard and they decided to rest them here. There's another stood up headstone. You can make that one out pretty good. 1834, 32 years. And then there's one over there. It says something 1862. Little monument there. And there's just more peppered out through there. Little block rolled in. And then some illegible graves through here. Back on the far end of the cemetery, behind all of this, is this lone stone. It looks like the kind of limestone they would make a grave out of. I'm just not sure. We'd have to get some historical records and see if maybe this is a grave or not. But it sits pretty far back away from everything else. And it's got this giant, I don't know if it's a beech or a sycamore sitting right beside it, but that tree's at least 6 foot wide. All right, I walked to the other side of the tree where that stone is. And I found one more that's actually perfectly cut and you could tell it was meant for some monument. So maybe whoever's resting over there isn't alone. I was reading up on the history of this cemetery while I was taking a little break. And if you remember, just a little bit ago, these Civil War graves right there, there's I think 12 of them. They were found displaced down in this ravine right here. And they're not sure where those graves belong. So they placed them together right there when they started to do rehabilitation of this cemetery. I guess it had been not taken well care of for decades. And around 2000, the Historical Society decided to try to start upkeep of this and start a maintenance fund. One of the other problems that this cemetery ran into is right over the hill here is the old railroad. It's now the Belbury Parkersburg Industrial. But I guess the railroad began to encroach on the cemetery, and a lot of the locals were really frustrated with the original railroad that came through and would throw water and yell obscenities at the railroad workers when they came through. So probably not a pleasant experience for those guys. I'm gonna walk down in this gap here. Doesn't look that big on camera, but we're walking down a hill that's probably 15 to 20 foot tall in prominence. And this is where those graves, I don't know if they were found right here, or they're found behind me in the brush. But you don't see too much down here now. It's actually really swampy. You can tell it's kind of a runoff. There's actually something right here, a little rock right there that's some type of, it's placed in the ground too. I don't know if it's rolled down here or not, but you could see it. The way they talked, there were no monuments down in here, but I'm not too sure. I don't see anything else up through here. Everything else is on flat ground. Just walking up the hill. I haven't ran into any yet, but we have some residents in here. Looks like some groundhogs inhabit this graveyard. And actually, one of them dug up a little bottle piece there. We're gonna leave it. It's not really kosher to take anything from a cemetery. One thing I've always found pleasant about cemeteries is there are a lot of evergreen trees in them. Pines, cedars, hemlock are my favorite trees. And there's a little bit of history as to why you see so many evergreens in cemeteries. It's believed by many that planting cedar trees in cemeteries brings good luck to the land. There are lots of superstitions all over the world surrounding cedar trees. The Egyptians believed that they had qualities that could grant people immortality. And the Cherokee had a superstition that if you buried somebody and then planted a cedar tree on top of it, the cedar tree would inherit the personality and traits of the person that was interred below it. So there's a lot of different reasons why you'll see so many different types of cedar and evergreens in cemeteries. One of the main reasons too is just simply aesthetic. Cedar trees, pine trees, hemlock, they stay green all year round, and they provide kind of a visual for people, even during the cold months of the year when the deciduous trees have lost all their leaves and they look kind of barren. Well, that about sums this place up. This is Holliday Cemetery, right in downtown Parkersburg. It's a place I've never been in before. I've drove by it thousands of times. When I was a kid, I grew up just over this tree here, about maybe 3/4 of a mile. And I've rode my bike past this. Mom's drove her van past it. And I've always wanted to come in and explore this place and learn the history about it. Well, that's our tour today. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I really did. I've been waiting a long time to come in here. I've just drove by it so many times. I had a little bit of time today and I finally got fed up with passing this place up. It's called Holliday Cemetery, located right in downtown Parkersburg. If you guys like this video, be sure to subscribe and we'll see you next time.